All right, what is going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to another episode of Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo sports talk and more. My name is Patrick Moran. Big thank you to everyone out there, as always, for watching, for listening, for following, subscribing. You guys are the best. I appreciate you very, very much. I also appreciate today's presenting sponsor, which of course is Sunny Reds, 1841 Abbott Road, Lackawanna, just literally a handful of minutes down the road or up the road, depending on which way you're coming from Highmark Stadium. Elite, elite, elite wings, awesome oven brick pizza, fish fries, burgers. They got it all, man. Drinks, vibes, great time, great place to be. If you have not been there yet, or even if you have been, and you're in that area, make sure you go and check out Sunny Reds, a big supporter of this show. And I would love it for all the people who support this show to get out there and support them as well. All right, this is it's not technically our first episode of 2025. Dropped one on New Year's Eve, but this is the first episode that I am recording here for 2025. I'm recording this late afternoon, very early evening on New Year's Day. 9 reasons. Say it again. 9 reasons that I have found objectively, at least what I think is objectively anyway, on why Josh Allen should and will be your 2024 NFL MVP. That is the meat and the potatoes of what this show is about today. We talk about it all the time. You, I, everybody on social media, the water cooler. It has been a fascinating and polarizing topic. It is every year, but especially this year. Josh Allen versus Lamar Jackson is all the rage, the good, the bad, the ugly of it all. Of course, anything that's fueled with social media is eventually going to turn ugly. It is a cesspool. That's the way it is, and that's the way it will continue to be. There's not a lot that you could do about it. This is also media fueled. This is content creator fueled. This, of course, is fan fueled. And it's something that, again, it's polarizing. It is something that is fun to talk about. We talk about it on the show. You hear about it on every other show. You hear about it from every fan, every sports media person. Again, everybody has an opinion. But we kind of gloss over it. At least I know I do. I'm like, all right, well, here's Josh Allen's the MVP. The Bills are 13-3. Case closed. Lamar Jackson's the MVP. Look how much better his stats are. Case closed. So what I wanted to do with this episode is take an opportunity here to really sit down, and I wanted to think things out. I wanted to lay out some thoughts, kind of like in a sort of a deep dive, not entirely a deep dive type way, because this isn't going to be a 60 to 90 minute episode today, but I want to get this out of the way. And I felt like this is a perfect time. All right. So the Buffalo Bills are going to wrap up their season Sunday in Foxborough. Very few starters are going to play for the Bills. Hell, very few starters might end up playing for the Patriots. This is not going to be the most entertaining football game you ever seen in your life, folks. More like a preseason game. There was literally nothing at stake for the Buffalo Bills in terms of the standings. There's a couple individual things. There's some, team goal oriented things, and I'm sure that they would like to achieve. But in terms of the standings, this game don't mean shit. And we all know that. And they're not trying to really get away from that either. So anyway, I thought today would be a perfect opportunity to kind of get this out of the way so that after this and after this game this weekend, because tomorrow's episode will be like kind of a sort of Bills preview or Patriots preview. I'll have hopefully somebody with me for that. But anyway, after this game on Sunday, it's all about the playoffs. Okay. It's not about awards. Nobody gives a shit about who's going to be MVP once the playoffs start. A lot of people, quite frankly, don't really give a shit about who's going to be the MVP right now. And, as I'm discussing this, I understand that. I'm fully aware, but I just wanted to take this opportunity to talk about that. So that's what we're going to do on today's episode. Like I said, I'm recording this anyway on January 1st. I really hope that everybody out there had a great New Year's, no matter how you celebrated it, whether you were at home with family and loved ones, whether you went to a party, whether you went out to bars, whether you went to somewhere where the ball dropped, whatever it may have been. I truly hope that you enjoyed it. For me personally, it was a very low-key New Year's Eve for me, and I love that. That's not a complaint. It's exactly what I wanted to do. My wife and I went to my in-laws' house. They are very elderly, we'll say, 80, 83 years old. So don't take those things for granted that, they're going to be around next year. So that's what we decided to do. We played a little bit of trivia, just watch the ball drop, relax, eat, a very good time. By the way, also, you've been on the show, or if you've been following us for a while, I'm not in the hospital today, which is a pretty big dubs for me. The last 2 years, sometime between January 1st and January 3rd, and maybe I shouldn't count my chickens before they hatch here, but I've been in the hospital the last 2 years in a row, right at or immediately after New Year's, because I have COPD, and for whatever reason, it decides to get inflamed, and I think it's called exacerbate right around New Year's, and it's kind of really taken me out the past couple of years. But so far, so good. Anyway, Bills news before we get into the Josh Allen thing quickly here, too. Practice Wednesday, actually a walkthrough, but still a projection. And Sean McDermott spoke to the media. And the one bit of news, which is definitely news, to come out of One Bills Drive on Wednesday is no Terrell Bernard at practice at all. He suffered a leg injury. I think Joe Biscaglia, I've seen a couple other people talk about it being a quad. So he's not practicing. He obviously is not going to play on Sunday. He wasn't going to play on Sunday, even if nothing happened. Hopefully, and we don't know as I'm recording this anyway. I haven't heard anything, no real details. Again, other than it's a quad injury. Sean McDermott did say on Monday, a couple days ago, that there was nothing like significantly new to come out of that game. So this is a little bit surprising here on Wednesday. Hopefully, with rest, he'll be fine. Hopefully, this is a little more precautionary, and that's why he's not practicing at all. Because again, there's absolutely zero need for Terrell Bernard to be on the field on Sunday or even to practice at all this week if he's got literally anything wrong with him whatsoever. So hopefully, with some rest, he'll be fine. But got to be honest with you, man. If not, it's something to think about. Like, what if this injury lingers and Terrell Bernard can't go in the wild card round a week from now? And I know that's not something that anybody, including myself, wants to think about. But when you have an injury and you have to miss practice, you got to at least have that thought in your mind. You'd be foolish not to. What would happen if Terrell Bernard, either he can't go at all, or he can go, but he's incredibly limited, or he re-aggravates it early in a wild card game, whether it's Denver, Miami, Cincinnati, whoever it may be? What do they do? Balin Spector is not even an option. And to be completely honest with you, I'm glad he's not an option. He's on IR. So that's not an option. Right now, the backup after him is actually Joe Andreessen. Like, if Terrell Bernard is hurt to the point that either he can't play in this game, or if he re-aggravates a quad muscle or whatever it may be early in the game and they got to go to somewhere else, do they go to Joe Andreessen in a playoff game? Because on the surface, it certainly would seem like Matt Milano, who's going to play his spot, and Dorian Williams, who's been Milano's backup all year, ideally, you would love to have both of those two linebackers on the field at the same time if Bernard can't be out there. But the issue is Dorian Williams has not had any real work at the Mike spot. And I don't think Sean McDermott, at least not publicly that I've heard anyway, has really talked about having any interest in that at all. So I don't know if Terrell Bernard, if something happens where he couldn't go. And again, I hope this is just nothing more than precautionary, but it's at least worth saying that how would the Bills handle it? Would they go to Joe Andreessen, or would they find a way, even if he's had pretty much no work all season at that spot, Dorian Williams alongside Matt Milano, which of course, I don't want to go any further than a potential wild card game, but it's just something worth thinking about. And we'll see how things play out. Hopefully by Thursday or Friday, even though we already know he's not going to play, hopefully maybe he can get eliminated. So just to make us feel a little bit better at practice over the next couple of days. DeMar Hamlin was limited. He's been limited now for the past couple of weeks, though. I think strongly that if he can go, he's going to play. Most starters are going to get a full rest. I do not think DeMar Hamlin is, nor should be one of them. I think it's very important that he gets out there and gets some reps and knocks off any rust he may have. He's already missed 3 straight games. It is certainly not ideal for DeMar Hamlin to potentially miss 4 straight games and then come back and get right into the starting lineup and play in a lose and go home elimination playoff scenario. I know that there's been a growing sentiment for Cole Bishop, the rookie, and he's looked good at times. There's some things about Cole Bishop that are certainly more exciting than DeMar Hamlin, but we've also seen this guy get beaten, understandably so. Again, a rookie. Let's put some expectations on it here, but I don't think at the end of the day, Sean McDermott will go with the rookie. If DeMar Hamlin can play, of course. Even if DeMar were to miss this game, I still think that he would go back in the playoffs to DeMar just because I think it's more of a little bit of a security blanket, a little safety thing. He probably feels a little more comfortable with DeMar, the veteran out there, as opposed to the rookie. But you never know. Anyway, it's something. Those are probably the 2 things right now going on with the Bills that are actually worth monitoring over the next few days and into the weekend. Is what are the Bills going to do at middle linebacker as a contingent plan for Terrell Bernard? They at least got to be thinking about some kind of contingency plan in case something happens further with him. And also DeMar Hamlin, Cole Bishop. Definitely interesting stuff. Okay, so as I get into this Josh Allen deserves MVP talk here going forward, is incredibly important to me that I make something else abundantly clear. I love Lamar Jackson, okay? And I want to be really clear about that. I think Lamar Jackson is a special, special football player, man. He is a 2-time MVP already. And I think he is a very worthy and deserving MVP candidate, maybe even MVP this year as well. I think when it comes to Lamar Jackson, on some levels anyway, that despite the fact he's already a multi-time MVP winner, that he is still somehow not just underrated, but like criminally underrated by fans around the league, if not just flat out disrespected. Okay. So this today is absolutely, positively not designed at all to be any kind of smear Lamar Jackson case. I want to be clear on that. Again, I need to be clear. I kind of feel like it's arbitration. Like, let's talk baseball here, okay? An arbitration. That's when a player and the team do not agree on a salary. Hockey, it happens all the time as well. And they can't come up with a contract that they both agree on, but the player's not eligible for free agency yet, so they can file for arbitration. They go to arbitration. And when they get to arbitration, the player loves that team most of the time. And most of the time, the team loves that player. But basically, they go to war with each other at arbitration over salary. Like, the team has to try to make the player seem like he's not worth X amount of dollars, even if he is, and vice versa. The player needs to talk himself up that he's worth even more than what he is. And it could get, at least it seems like it could get really ugly between the player and the team. So again, it's kind of how I feel right now. Like, to be able to push my case for Josh Allen, who I truly do think deserves to win MVP. Okay. And able to push my case forward for Josh Allen, I had to do it at the expense of his competition, which of course in this case is Lamar. But one last time, this isn't anti-Lamar as much as it is pro-Josh. And every single reason that I'm about to get into right now, and I got 9 of them, I firmly genuinely, and I think objectively, believe them to all be true. So, on that note, here are 9 reasons why I think Josh Allen is, will be, and should be your 2024 NFL MVP. And I want to start with the first one, which maybe to some is the most obvious, but I think it's the most important one. And that is simply Josh Allen's just doing more with less. A huge part of being MVP is elevating everybody around you, everyone else around you, especially with guys, at least that on paper, aren't as good or even nearly as good as some of the competition. All right. And I think everybody, even Ravens flock, would have to agree, the people who cover the Ravens would have to agree that the accomplished talent and pedigree surrounding Lamar Jackson is, I don't even think it's just superior to Josh Allen. I actually think it's vastly superior, at least at this point anyway, to Josh Allen. You start with Baltimore, okay? You can't talk about it enough. I know it's the low-hanging fruit to talk about Derrick Henry, but you know what? It should be the low-hanging fruit. Derrick Henry has 1,783 rushing yards this season. Derrick Henry is averaging 5.8 yards per carry. Henry's rushing total for this year, and he's still got another game left, but he's at 16 because most, throughout the franchise, the history, teams played 14 and then eventually 16 games. All right, so we'll even just forget what he does on Sunday. Who cares? Let's just take the 1,783 yards that he has right now. It's the second most in the history of the Baltimore Ravens, period. And it's not even close who's third. Like, he has 419 more rushing yards than the person who's third all time on that list, which is Jamal Lewis, who did it back 24 years ago. So you got to throw that out there. Derrick Henry is an all-pro, arguably the best running back in the NFL, okay? You cannot deny that. You can't. Zay Flowers, 1,000-yard receiver, a first-round pick who's a 1,000-yard receiver. He's got 73 catches this year for 1,047 yards. Their number 2 receiver, Rashad Bateman, he's got 680 yards, which is 155 more yards than the second best Buffalo Bills wide receiver. Oh, and by the way, Rashad Bateman is also another former first-round draft pick. And then you got Mark Andrews, one of the very best tight ends in the NFL, has been now for a handful of seasons. And after a slow start, he's still got 10 touchdown catches this season. That is quite literally double the amount that anybody on the Buffalo Bills have. So you got a guy who's had the second best rushing campaign in the history of the franchise. You got a 1,000-yard receiver. You got a second receiver who's also a first-round pick, who's near 700 receiving yards. And you got a studly tight end who, even despite having a slow start to the year, still has double the touchdowns that anyone on the Bills have. And then you go to the Bills. Khalil Shakir has 821 yards. No one else on the Bills has more than 525 yards receiving for the season. All right. Second round rookie draft pick, Keon Coleman, missed a full month with the wrist injury. Last year's first round draft pick, Dalton Kincaid, missed a full month with a knee injury. Their quote unquote number 1 receiver, Amari Cooper, didn't even come to the Buffalo Bills until halfway through week 7. And he's only had 20 catches in 8 games. Their big offseason priority free agent, Curtis Samuel, has been borderline useless. The team leader for the Buffalo Bills right now in touchdown catches, astoundingly, is Matt Collins. Matt Collins leads the Buffalo Bills in touchdown receptions this year with 5. Leads the entire team with just 5. So there's your weapons. They've been hurt. They've come mid-season. And Matt Collins leads your team. Matt Collins, a special team stud through most of his career, is your playmaker and the guy who gets in the end zone more than anyone else this season. In the rushing side, they don't even have a 1,000-yard rusher. James Cook has 802 less rushing yards than Derrick Henry. And this is not meant to be a knock on James Cook. James Cook has been absolutely freaking fantastic this year. I'm just stating facts. I'm spitting facts right now. James Cook has over 800 less rushing yards than Derrick Henry. And in terms of just the teams running the football, if you take Josh Allen and you take Lamar Jackson out of their respective equations when it comes to rushing totals, and by the way, Lamar Jackson, 800 some yards rushing, an absolute beast, a special player. And I'm not going to penalize him for being a great running quarterback. I'm just saying, for the purpose of rushing yards with running backs, this segment here is talent around them. It's not about Josh Allen and it's not about Lamar Jackson. So take Josh out and take Lamar out. And even with the big advantage for rushing yards for Lamar, even if you wipe them both away, the Ravens have still run for 548 yards on the ground this year from their running backs. That is a huge difference. And then, of course, with the Bills, they don't have back going into the season 4 of their 5 top wide receivers from last year, including, of course, the guy who had a franchise record 100 catches or more in 4 straight years. The only person in the entire history of the Buffalo Bills organization to ever do that. And he was gone. Meanwhile, and Gabe Davis is gone too, of course. You look at the Ravens, their only notable offensive loss from last year without any skill position player was a very cooked Odell Beckham Jr. So, of all the reasons that I'm going to list today and things that I'm pointing out right now, I think this is where there's the biggest, and it's not even close, the biggest discrepancy. Like, Lamar Jackson's supporting cast is significantly better than Josh Allen's. So doing more with less is a very big deal. And as far as Derrick Henry, I'm going to come back to him again shortly because there's something else in my 9-point argument that is meaningful regarding him. So anyway, quick break, come back, and I'll start flying through these quicker. But that was a big one and an extended one that needed a lot of detail. So I got that out of the way. I'll start flying through these a lot quicker after the break. All right, I am back here and I'm going over 9 reasons why I think that Josh Allen is the MVP of the NFL this year. By the way, just take a little sip of this. No, most of you don't really give a shit, but day 1, no pop. I always have pop in here. Like whenever you see me taking a sip of whatever it is on the show, it's always pop. But I actually, right now, this is some Crystal Light, but I'm drinking a lot of water and Crystal Light. One of my New Year's resolutions is to stop drinking pop. But anyway, all right, so point number 2, when he matters most. All right. I went back and I looked it up. Over the last 15 years, only 3 MVPs have come from a team that had 5 or more losses. Of course, this year, Lamar and the Ravens have 5 losses. So over the last 15 years, just 3 MVPs with 5 or more losses. The last player to win NFL MVP who had 5 losses was Matt Ryan from Atlanta. And you'd have to go back to 2016 for that. So that's 8 years ago. The other 2 who have won MVPs in seasons where their team lost 5 or more games is Peyton Manning, who did it with the Colts back in 2013, and Adrian Peterson, who actually had 6 losses with the Vikings. He did it back in 2012. So he had 2012, 2013, 2016, 3 years where a player with 5 or more losses still won MVP. So it has not happened since then. Point 3, Josh Allen's 2024 stats, while they don't measure up to Lamar's stats this year for the most part, his stats this year are better than Lamar Jackson's MVP winning season from a year ago. Now, this is a point you keep going back to. Lamar Jackson statistically was not very good last year. Last year was a very weird year, though. I'll admit that. But Lamar won MVP and rather easily, and he did it based on, individual spectacular plays and certainly team success. Baltimore was the number 1 seed last year in the AFC, but not really because of individual stats. So that's been an argument that Ravens flock is going after. We got all the stats now this year. Anyway, Josh Allen's stats this year are better than Lamar's stats from last year. Close, but better. Passing yards, Josh Allen has 53 more passing yards this year than Lamar did last year. Josh has 4 more touchdowns. Josh has 1 less interception. And by the way, it's not 4 more touchdowns, it's 4 more passing touchdowns, 1 less interception, and he's actually had 11 more total touchdowns than Lamar had last year in his MVP season. And I've said it all along. If you're talking about primary stats, Josh's are better this year than Lamar's were last year. Now, admittedly, that's not the strongest of the 9 points that I'm making here. But again, if you're going to throw stats one way, be prepared to have them come back at you another, which is kind of point 4 here. Some context behind stats. There is a discrepancy this year. And it probably would still be, not probably, it still would be Lamar statistically having a better year. But part of the reason Josh hasn't thrown more passes this year and likely more TDs for his team this year because the Bills have been up by 21 or more points after the third quarter 4 different times this season. So 4 times after 3 quarters this year, the Bills have been up by at least 21 points. They were up 21 against Miami. They were up 24 the very next week against Jacksonville. They were up 21 after 3 in Seattle. And just this past week, they were up 33 points against the Jets. Josh Allen literally did not play in the fourth quarter this past game against the Jets. And he didn't really play in the fourth quarter against Jacksonville as well. And that was on Monday Night Football. That's a lot of action to miss and a lot of being conservative with your offense because you're up 3 scores, late in football games. Lamar Jackson has thrown 103 more passes this year than Josh Allen in games that are decided by 7 points or less. The Bills have had 7 games this year, 7 points or less. Baltimore's had 10. Big difference. To me, that shows that the Ravens games have been, generally speaking, much tighter, while the Bills are focused on protecting bigger leads. So again, stats, but with context. Point 5, signature games and signature wins. I feel like MVPs have their best games in their biggest moments on the biggest stages. The Buffalo Bills this season are the only team to beat the Kansas City Chiefs all year. At least before week 18. The Chiefs aren't even trying to beat Denver this Sunday, so they're very likely going to end up finishing 15-2. But to this point, when the games count, when they matter, there's only been one team in the NFL that's beaten Buffalo or Kansas City all year, and that's the Buffalo Bills. All right? They be going for 18-0 this week, and maybe some of those starters play were it not for losing at Orchard Park 30-21 a handful of weeks ago. And of course, you remember that game. I said big games, big stages, big moments, big plays. It's 4th and 2, and the Bills are protecting a 2-point lead. Do they kick a field goal and go up 5, knowing that Mahomes can bring you down, score a touchdown, and win? No. Sean McDermott gets aggressive. They go for it. 4th and 2, and Josh Allen with a highlight reel run for a touchdown. One of, maybe even arguably the best, and certainly at the, in the crunch time of a game, NFL play of the year. Just an incredible play when they needed it the most. And they beat the Kansas City Chiefs. The Detroit Lions, an 11-game winning streak. The Bills put an end to that. And they did so in a game where Josh Allen throws for 362 yards. He runs for 68. And he accounts for 4 touchdowns. And not lost in those 2 games, Josh Allen won AFC Offensive Player of the Week in both those games. So against the best 2 teams in the league, Josh Allen is your AFC Offensive Player of the Week. Kansas City and Detroit are 29-1 against teams in the NFL this year that aren't the Buffalo Bills. That matters a ton. And if you don't think it does, I don't know what to tell you at this point. And voters kind of want to forget that stretch that long ago, okay? Before, the sleepwalk game against the Patriots and a Jets game this past week where the Jets had no interest in even being out there. People want to forget how well Josh played and how the national media, how they worship Josh Allen after this stretch of 4 games. That Kansas City, Frisco, Rams, Detroit 4-game stretch, Josh Allen had 1,014 yards passing, 223 yards rushing, so 1,337 total yards between passing and rushing. He had 16 total touchdowns in those 4 games. That's 4 touchdowns a game in 1 turnover. 16 touchdowns, 1 turnover, 1,337 yards rushing and passing in a 4-game stretch that featured victories against the Chiefs, the Niners, at Detroit. And the only reason why they didn't go 4-0 is because the defense sucked against the Rams, a game where Josh had 6 touchdowns total. And if they win that game, Josh Allen wins AFC Offensive Player of the Week that game as well. So biggest games, biggest moments, biggest stages, especially as the seasons went on, Josh Allen has played, without question, his best football. Point 6, star running backs matter less with the Bills than they do with the Ravens. James Cook has been held under 100 yards rushing 11 times this year. The Bills are 8-3 when James Cook gets 100 rushing yards or less. Conversely, when Derrick Henry does not run for 100 yards, the Baltimore Ravens are just 3-5. The Ravens are only 3-5 when Derrick Henry is held under 100 yards. That says to me, and again, I want to go back to the beginning here because this is not designed to be Lamar slander, kind of like arbitration. I got to make the one side look good at the expense of the other side. But this says to me, when Lamar needs to do more because Derrick Henry's being shut down, he's being contained, they actually have a losing record. They're 3-5 in those games. Now, conversely, if Derrick Henry runs for 100 yards, the Ravens literally don't lose. The Ravens are 8-0 when Derrick Henry runs for 100 yards, and they're 3-5 when they don't. I mean, if that doesn't scream that Derrick Henry is actually every single bit as valuable to the Baltimore Ravens offense as Lamar Jackson, if that doesn't convince you right there, 8-0 versus 3-5, I don't know what else does. I don't. 3 more here. Point 7, and I think this is a low-key underrated one that not enough people talk about. Josh Allen's on-field growth, and it's got nothing to do with Lamar. This is all about Josh. So this isn't a comparison per se here. But point 7, Josh Allen's on-field growth and maturity in limiting bad mistakes. We all know about Josh Allen and the 40 touchdown total for 5 straight years. The first one in the history of the NFL to do so. That's incredible. Awesome. Amazing. But at the same token, at least coming into the season, the touchdown totals have kind of masked a lot of his deficiencies, at least before this year, which is bad decisions and even more importantly, turnovers. And you look at the turnovers over these past 4 years coming into this year. 2020, he had 14 turnovers. And by turnovers, I mean interceptions plus lost fumbles where he would lose the football. So he had 14 in 2020. In 2021, he had 17. 2022, he had 16. None of that's good. None of that's great. And then last year, which is a year that many people thought that Josh Allen deserved MVP, Josh Allen had 21 turnovers last year. 21. This year, 16 games, Josh Allen has 7 turnovers. That's it. Like literally cut the turnovers down from last year by 2/3, by 66%. He's cut it down by a half or more than any year during this 5-year run. That's incredible. Josh Allen sees the field better now. Josh Allen sees defensive calls better now. He senses them coming. He processes things quicker. He's more patient. He's more poised. He takes more easier throws. He'll take what the defense gives him more, and he throws less high danger passes now than he ever has. And he does all that while still doing, this spectacular, holy shit, this is on ESPN. He just tipped over the sideline. He just ran through somebody, did something crazy. He's still doing this spectacular as much as ever, it feels like anyway, or as much as anyone else in the league, that's for damn sure. It's just been incredible. He's a gunslinger and he's a madman like he's always been. But this year more than ever, we're seeing that Josh Allen has plenty of that Peyton Manning or even Tom Brady, like mental dog in him as well. So he has really processed the game, grown up, and matured in terms of decision making and limiting the turnovers, which just makes him even more unstoppable. And he's done a way better job this year than he ever has. Point 8. Josh Allen, simply put, is the best player on an historically great Bills offense and regular season team for 2024. The Bills have scored a franchise record 509 points. And I love the fact that we're doing this before they play a meaningless game where they might add some bullshit cheap stats. This is before that. This is 16 games. All right. So they've had a franchise record, 509 points. It was 501 in 2020. They beat that this year. They're averaging 32 points per game, the most in franchise history. They've scored 63 total touchdowns this season, the most in franchise history. They've won 13 games, tied for the most ever in franchise history. And they can beat that on Sunday. But even if they don't, they've already tied it here. And they've tied in not just the Bills record, but an NFL, all-time NFL record. 13 guys have caught a touchdown. So the phrase that we've been hearing before the season, which kind of felt like a pile of shit, to be honest with you, coming in, everybody eats, kind of felt like we just don't got anybody good enough to eat more than the others. Kind of what it felt like. But that's not true. The catchphrase everybody eats has been proven to be real. Josh has played every game again, despite some really big hits, despite some injury scares. The man just remains indestructible, and that matters. There's very few quarterbacks in the league, including, quite frankly, Lamar Jackson, that could say that. 114 consecutive games played. The way he plays football, the style he plays football, the licks he takes, the price he's willing to pay to make a play for his team, it's incredible. All right, so that's 8. And then the last one here before we get out is, and this one to me is as important as any of them except for the first one, and that's expectations going into the season. That's got to count. That's got to matter. The Buffalo Bills were a team that were pegged second place in AFC East. Hell, maybe even third place in AFC East by a lot of people, too. A lot of people. Critic after critic after critic said that the Super Bowl window was shut. Josh Allen was literally voted by his peers. Okay, not by me, not by you, not by people on Twitter, not by people who cover the NFL, not by bloggers, not by podcasters, by his peers. Josh Allen apparently was voted the NFL's most overrated player. That might be the funniest thing I've heard, by the way, in a long time. Every time I think about that, I cannot help but laugh. You want to talk about something that would fuel a person like Josh Allen? Good Lord. But anyway, yeah, most overrated player is voted by his peers, okay? He lost Stephon Diggs, lost Gabe Davis, lost Mitch Morse, Poyer, Hyde, Trey White, core player after core player after core player, captain after captain after captain after captain. The expectations for this team, low. Rebuild year, retool year, transition year. I think this is what Brandon being used quite often. That was what we thought coming in. And here we are, folks. Here we are. The Bills just had as good of a regular season as they've ever had, led by a player who's playing at a level better than he's ever played at. And it's a level that no one in the league this year, other than 2 guys could match. Lamar Jackson, and shout out Joe Burrow. He deserves some flowers too. But again, they're probably not even going to make the playoffs. He's not even an MVP thought. So to wrap it all up, is Lamar Jackson worthy of being an MVP? Yes, he is. But is he the MVP? No, he's not. And I just gave you, I hope I gave you 9 compelling, agreeable, good reasons why Josh Allen is your 2024 NFL MVP. I tell you, kind of fun. And I don't think I was being a homer during that. Like every thought that I had, I feel like I truly meant it. I truly felt it. I wasn't trying to get something over on somebody. I wasn't trying to fool you with something that's actually, either not accurate or that I'm kind of like leaning the question or the fact towards you the wrong way on purpose. I don't feel like I was doing that. I feel like I was being truthful and honest with my assessments. Now that it's done, I feel pretty damn good about it. I do. I feel pretty good about Josh Allen winning MVP. And look, I know that's ultimately not going to be what matters. What the Bills do in the playoffs is how we will ultimately remember the season. We'll remember it a lot more than if Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson end up winning MVP. But look, MVP is MVP. It's an incredible honor. It's the highest individual accolade you can get in the sport. So to have your quarterback on your team, and I've said this a million times, don't take this team, don't take this season, don't take this regime, don't take this run for granted. If you're a fan of this team, find some time to reflect and just sit back and enjoy it because it is special. It is fun to watch, and it's led by a player who's as special as anybody, not just in the league today, but one of the more special players who's ever played the football game. Anyway, all right, that's going to do it for today's show. I will be back tomorrow. I think we're going to have a guest, but regardless, it's our weekly Bills versus opponent preview, of course, this week. The Patriots. We'll talk about the Bills. We'll talk about the Patriots. Keys to victory, something I do every week. Guess what? Who gives a shit what the keys to victory are? The 3 Bills, the keys to victory is who cares if they win? Everybody stays healthy. But I'll have 3 bold predictions, which could be fun because we're going to dig through some backups, and some backups are going to do some shit. So maybe I'll actually have, instead of 3 keys to victory, I'll extend it and do some extra Bills bold prediction, final guest score, all that stuff coming up on the show tomorrow. Talk to you guys then.